What is going on, guys? You got your boy Reconjack here, bringing you my Token Minorities Summer Showdown draft analysis and Open Division Round 1 gameplay. Just a quick synopsis before we hop into it. This was an 8-mon point-based snake draft, and I got the lucky 8th out of 8 spot in my draft pool. Honestly, didn't mind being last in the draft because it meant I got the wheel pick, so there was no getting a quote-unquote top-tier pick early in round 1, but I was able to plan out synergy a lot better, which I much rather prefer. Getting more into the draft now, at first I had my eyes on Mega Gallade with potentially Clefable to pair it with, but unfortunately it went 2 picks before me, so I had to reshape my draft plans. I knew I wanted to start with a strong fairy, and so I decided to pick Mega Diancie. Mega Diancie is one of the best offensive threats with a huge attack and special attack stat of 160 and a base speed of 110. Unfortunately, it is very much so a glass cannon with a bunch of weaknesses, so I wanted to complement it with something that could sponge a lot of those attacks. A standard Mega Diancie Dragon Core usually uses Garchomp and even Zygarde, but I wanted to mix it up a bit, so I went with the old reliable pick, Latios. I think these two Pokemon complement each other extremely well and start a very offensive core that I'll be building around. When the draft eventually came back to me, a lot of really great mons were gone, but I saw another core that I've always wanted to use. Keldeo was my third pick, which works so well with Latios and eats steel types for both Lati and Diancie. Something I really like about my 3 picks so far is that while they're all usually specially oriented, each can hit on the physical side as well. Diancie with base 160 physical attack and things like Diamond Storm, Latios with Psyshock and Setup and Dragon Dance, and Keldeo with Secret Sword make these mons pretty difficult to prep for defensively. And then to finish off my second wheel, I decided to go with an actual physical threat in Weavile. A dark type is always essential to any draft, and a powerful physical attacker with stab knockoff and ice attacks and priority will always be a threat to any team. At this time, I'm looking at my draft and I see a Lati Keldeo Weavile core with Mega Diancie thrown in there, and it's looking pretty fast, it's looking pretty powerful, but as more and more mons were being taken, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to pick next. Obviously, I wanted to complete my DFS core and I needed something to stop fairies in their tracks, as my team had that one very exploitable weakness. So I see Heatran sitting there, and it's mine. Pretty surprised it made it this far back to me, but definitely a happy addition to the team. Heatran is the definition of a fairy check. This thing is bulky and can eat HP grounds for breakfast. Having such a fat mon with base 130 special attack is such a good addition to my team, so that being a pivot doesn't mean losing offensive momentum. Adding a second Stealth Rock user was also a good option to give Diancie more freedom in its set options. Finishing off this wheel was a bit challenging. I was looking at a lot of cheaper mons since I had already spent so many points. I wanted to try and grab some value mons, but Zapdos caught my eye and as still available, and I couldn't help myself from scooping it up. It pairs so well with Heatran and the rest of my team and is another fantastic bulky offensive pivot that I can abuse. An electric type with Defog, U-turn, and reliable recovery is amazing, but unfortunately it left me with only 5 more points to pick 1 or 2 more mons. So to the bottom of the barrel I went, scrounging around for a ground type, and came up with Torterra, a 2-point, what most people consider to be an unmon. I'm actually pretty happy with it though, as it fulfills a couple roles that I still needed with 2 important types in ground and grass and more rocks. So now I have 3 points left and not much available that I really want, but I decided to take Haunter for that neat dual typing and 115 special attack. So that last pick rounded out my draft. Looking at it, at face value, it's clearly a hyper-offensive team and lacks physical presence, but digging a little deeper, the physical threats are very much there. I'm happy with the mixture of offensive presence and bulk that this team offers me. I think I was able to compress a lot into 8 Pokemon, and I'm excited to show you guys my first round of battling, so let's just hop into it. Alright guys, on the screen I'm putting my build and my game 1 opponent Kanaki's team. For this matchup, I'm bringing max specially defensive sub-toxic Heatran, 4 attacks Life Orb Weavile with Throat Chop over Nox to do more damage to Mew holding a Z Crystal, Scarf Trick Defog Lati, Stealth Rocks, Setup Mixed Mega Diancie, max special defense Zapdos. Wait, this is actually an older version of my Zapdos set. This should say a max physically defensive Zapdos with Discharge, Toxic Roost, and Whirlwind, And I went with this set because it walls and phases all of his setup mons, and a Life Orb 3 attack Speedy Torterra. The game plan going into this match was to get up rocks, trick a Scarf onto Klefki, and put myself into a position where either Diancie or Torterra could set up a rock polish and sweep. Time to see how it played out. Alright guys, due to some technical issues, I had to move over to my laptop to record my post battles, but here we are with Kaneki. We see that he's brought his Z Mew, Mega Charizard X, Klefki, Thunderous Incarnate, Seismitoad, and Electrode. You already know my lineup, so we're just going to hop into this. He decides to lead off with Seismitoad as I lead off with my Zapdos. I'm going to go for the Save Toxic, and we're going to see that he actually goes for an Icy Wind and misses. Not sure how big that is, turn 1 of the game, but it does reveal some of his set to me. I'm going to switch out to my Latios. I don't think that the Seismitoad can do much to it, and he's going to decide to go for Rocks. Does take a little bit of toxic damage here, and he switches out into Klefki, which was a pretty easy prediction for me. I go for my trick, and I'm able to trick that Klefki turn 3 of the game, which is huge. He switches out into his Electrode as I defog the rocks away. Not really sure what he wants to do with Electrode versus Latios, so I'm going to try to bop this thing with the Draco Meteor, but he does go for that Light Screen, which is a pretty nice play. Wasn't expecting screens, but I do have that defog option, and I'm going to go for it and just get rid of his screens. And I'm going to switch out into Torterra. I don't think he has much for Torterra. I thought he'd switch here, but he just decides to set up the Reflect again. So back out, I go into my Latios as he set up screens. I'm going to try to defog, but he reveals the Explosion Tech, which is very nice prep on his part. So he is going to be able to bring in his Mew for free behind screens. And as soon as I see this Mew, I immediately am going to switch into my Zapdos. Thankfully, I do dodge his Z Hypnosis. It is a pretty inaccurate move, so I'm not surprised that he did miss too, as I go for my Whirlwind and I get rid of that speed boost for the rest of the game. So that's no longer a concern for me. The Zapdos has done its job. I Whirlwind him out into Seismitoad, and I switch back into Latios here so that I can defog these screens away as he brings out his Mew again. And assuming that this thing is going to start setting up on me again, I'm going to switch out into my Zapdos, as he does in fact land the Hypnosis finally, which isn't really a big deal since he has missed 2 Icy Winds and 2 Hypnosises already. So I'm going to stay asleep, just trying to get that early wake and click Whirlwind, but he is going to knock me out here with +2 Dazzling Gleams as I stay asleep for all 3 turns here. So that's pretty unfortunate, but Zapdos did do the job that it was meant to do. It stopped the Mew from having that double dance action going on. So I'm happy with it. I bring in my Weavile, and he ends up switching out. Not really sure why he did that. I feel like that Mew could have chewed a hit from Weavile, regardless of what attack I went for, but he does go out into Klefki, which is Scarf. So I go out to my Heatran just to scout what it wants to do, and it surprisingly goes for Thunder Wave, which if I had stayed in with my Weavile, wouldn't have affected it since it was coming off as a Prankster Thunder Wave coming into a Dark type. But stuff happens. I switch out into my he switched out into his Charizard, and as I go into my Torterra, which forces him out, so he has to bring in Seismitoad, which falls to an Earthquake. He brings in his Mew and does a decent chunk with Dazzling Gleam, but I'm able to tank that and hit him back in return with a huge Wood Hammer, which knocks him down below 40%. Unfortunately, I'm not able to live the next Dazzling Gleam due to the Wood Hammer recoil plus Life Orb recoil, but it puts Mew in range for me to bring in my Mega Diancie and revenge kill with a Moonblast. So that's one huge threat out of the way. And he brings in his Thundurus, and I'm scared out. I don't really know what this thing wants to do, but it can pack the Flash Cannon. So I bring in my Latios to scout, and he goes for the Volt Switch to bring back in his Klefki. Now, again, I know this is Scarf, so I'm just going to stay in and see what he wants to do. So he decides to set up a Light Screen, so now he's locked into a non-attacking move, and I figured this is the perfect time to bring in my Mega Diancie, and if he stays in, which he ended up doing, I'm able to get my Rock Polish off for free, and now this Charizard is going to drop to a Diamond Storm. It's 100% chance not living that. neither is Thundurus, so the only chance he really has is his Klefki, but he ends up bringing in his Thundurus. At this point in the match, I wasn't really sure why he did that, but it turns out after discussing with him post game that he wasn't actually attacking the Flash Cannon. His only attacking move on Klefki is Dazzling Gleam, so I will be able to knock him out here in 3 attacks with Moonblast, and that's going to be GG to Kaneki. It was a good game. It really went according to plan on my end. I was able to trick the Scarf on the Klefki very early on into the game, and then I was able to find a moment where I could bring in my Mega Diancie and set it up so that I could successfully sweep in the late game. I do end up winning that 4-0, and yeah, I'm currently sitting 1-0, and we're going to move on to my next game, so let's just jump into it. Moving into my second game against Patches, I chose to bring 3 attack Zapdos with max HP and some Spadef investment, Calm Mind Recover Psychium Z Laddie with dual stab, Choice Scarf Weavile packing the HP Fire Tech, Double Dance Mega Diancie, Yachi Berry Stealth Rock 3 attack Torterra, and Rindo Berry Taunt Calm Mind Keldeo. The game plan here was to set rocks and pressure him offensively to position myself into a spot where I could successfully double dance with Mega Diancie. Scarf Kartana was a huge threat to my team, so I needed a revenge Scarfer, and Weavile surprisingly was able to fulfill that role while also outspeeding potential Scarf Lando and Mega Alakazam. The dual Water Core of Greninja and Toxapex was extremely difficult to prep for, and I felt like I couldn't make the perfect team because I had to prep so heavily to stop Pex from stalling me out, which is why I have a Keldeo set that is completely walled by Bulu, as well as Pex itself, which is supposed to stop with Taunt. Anyway, I was super uncomfortable with this matchup, but I knew as long as I was able to outplay him offensively, I'd have a decent chance of winning, so let's hop in and see how the game turned out. Alright guys, we're hopping into this game versus Patches. At Team Preview, we see that he's brought the Regirock, dual Water Core of Toxapex and Greninja, the Kartana, which is a huge threat to my team, Tapu Bulu, and Mega Alakazam. You already know my team, so we're just going to start the battle off. I'm going to lead off with my Torterra as he decides to lead off with Bulu. I don't really want to stay in here, so I'm going to go into Latios, which I know can eat any hit that this Bulu has for me. That's what I made this set for. So he only does like 20% to me, and I'm able to go for a Calm Mind on the next turn as he goes for a Toxic, which is pretty unfortunate since it puts me on a timer. So I'm going to start going for damage here. I go for a clean Psychic, do a little under half, but I do get that special defense drop, which is huge because now I'm very certain that he's going to switch out, and his switch is most likely going to be into the Greninja, and I'm able to successfully predict that and bop that thing with a fat Draco Meteor. At that point in time, I was like very excited because Greninja was such a big threat to my team. Now it's gone, and he brings in his Regirock. I'm not really sure what it wants to do. I'm pretty sure it's going to set up rocks, which it does as I bring in my Torterra. And I feel like he expected me to set up my rocks, but I was able to predict that. And I figured he'd bring in Bulu, and I went for that heavy slam, got that prediction right, and knocked it down to 1%. I do get up my rocks on the next turn as I eat a Horn Leech from him, and now I'm threatening him out with another heavy slam, which he does predict nicely, and he brings in his Kartana, which is like, right now I'm very scared of this thing. I don't know what it wants to do. I'm going to go into my Zapdos because it's a physically defensive Zapdos, and in my mind it should be sponging any attack from this thing, but I kind of forgot about the grassy terrain. And even with the grassy terrain, I didn't think that a Leaf Blade would do so much to my Zapdos, but it is able to 2-hit KO it. Unfortunately for him, he does get the para from my static ability, static coming in the clutch. That's why I put it on there over pressure. It did exactly what I needed it to do. So I'm able to scare it out with my Mega Diancie, and I will be able to pick up this 2-hit KO on the incoming Bulu with a combination of Earth Power and Moonblast. And he knows that, so he's going to switch out into his Toxapex, predicting my incoming Moonblast. But this puts me in a very optimal position because I know that I can set up on this on this Toxapex, since I do have that magic bounce ability, it can't haze my stat changes. So he's gonna go for the Scald as I Calm Mind up, and it's only doing a little under 30%, and I'm recovering health up from the grassy terrain. So I am able to get up a Calm Mind and a Rock Polish, as this thing's just trying to Scald, probably fishing for the burn, probably hoping for a crit. It just doesn't end up happening for him, and I am able to Earthquake him at +1, do like 65% to this thing, a huge chunk, and he goes for the Scald, still not picking up that burn, which is incredible luck for me. But I will be able to take this Toxapex out with another Earth Power, and I get the crit to boot there. He brings in his Regirock. This is like the only thing that might live. I do end up OHKOing it. Turns out that this was a max roll. I needed the max roll. We discussed it after the game, but it is what it is. He brings in his Mega Alakazam, which I outspeed and am able to OHKO with a Moonblast. And the rest of his team is just going to drop to this Mega Diancie. Bulu is going to drop to a Moonblast, and then Kartana is going to follow up, dropping to an Earth Power. So already in this second game, I'm loving my first round pick. I've now played 2 out of 2 games, where Mega Diancie has decided to put the team on its back and just sweep my opponent. The first game, it cleaned up in the late game. This game, I was able to kill 5 Pokemon with this thing. So Mega Diancie really proving to be a powerhouse in this format, and I'm loving it. I'm now 2-0, sitting at +9 differential, and we're just gonna hop into my third matchup right now. So I'll see you guys in a second. My third game was against my good pal Joao. Shout out to Red, even though he chose not to rep us this tourney. Looking at his team, all I see are a bunch of threats. Z-Lando T doesn't need further explanation. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love Clef and how deadly it can be. Manaphy is known for its Tail Glow and Calm Mind sets. Metagross can sweep my team with a Weakness Policy Agility set. Mega Absol naturally outspeeds and bops most of my mons. And you always have to respect the Shell Smash Cloyster option while also prepping for Hazard Stack. And then there's Life Orb or Choice Specs Jolteon, which pokes huge holes in my team, and even Vileplume, which actually soaks up a lot of my offensive options. This to me was the hardest team to prep for, and I don't think I still made that great of a team. 3-attack Zapdos, Scarf Heatran with Roar, Life Orb SD Weavile, Specs Keldeo, Yache Berry Stealth Rock Torterra, and a Ghostium Z Latios with Reflect doesn't cover every option he has to beat me with, but I felt like I couldn't compress everything I needed into 6 mons from what I had available to choose from. The last slot was particularly difficult to decide on. Lati wasn't a great option as it's offensively checked by a majority of mons he has, and defensively checked by Clef and Manaphy to an extent. But Mega Diancie wasn't great either for similar reasons. At the end, I chose to go with Lati, which requires more prep on his end in my opinion, and offers me a little more versatility. At the end of the day, all I could see was setup Clef sweeping me in the late game if I didn't lose earlier to any other setup mons that he had. Let's jump in and see how I handled this one. Alright guys, at the time I'm recording this, I realized that Joao was actually my second match before patches, but I've already made all the slides for everything, so we're going to rock and roll with this being my third match. So welcome to the third match. We see Joao's team at team preview. He's got the Metagross, Manaphy, Clefable, Jolteon, Mega Absol, and Cloyster. You already know my team, so we're just going to hop into this. He decided to lead with Manaphy. I'm not really sure why he did that, but this looks like free rocks to me since I led with my Torterra. So I get my rocks up as he switches into Metagross. Not really sure that this is the best switch into a Torterra, as I just EQ it and knock it down to below Citrus. He gets a little bit of health back and decides to Toxic me, but it's in range of another Earthquake. So that's exactly what I'm going to do as he switches out into his Cloyster. Now, So Cloyster is now in range of another Earthquake, and I'm feeling like he's going to predict me to switch. So I'm going to stay in and opt to knock it out with another EQ, as he does go for a Natural Gift, which ended up being Natural Gift Grass for Keldeo, but I don't make that play, and I'm able to knock out Cloyster. So Torterra does put in a nice amount of work in the early game, does drop to an Ice Beam from Manaphy since I was so low, even with the Yache Berry, but that's okay, it did its job. So I bring in Zapdos and go for the Heat Wave, predicting the switch into Jolteon, and then I'm going to switch into my Latios as he decides to Thunderbolt. I'm going to stay in here with Latios since it's my least valuable member at this moment in time. I'm going to take a Shadow Ball to the face, but I am going to be able to knock it out with a Psychic. So that's a pretty big threat to my team gone right there. It's going to allow him to come into Mega Absol for free, and I'm just going to decide to stay in the off chance that he went for a Sucker Punch. I'd be able to punish it with a Draco Meteor. If that's not the case, I go down and I bring in my Weavile to revenge. He does go into Metagross, and I miss my Icicle Crash, which isn't a big deal because it would have bounced off Metagross anyway. Here I'm predicting the Bullet Punch, so I switch out into my Zapdos. He makes the nice read and goes for Rocks himself. I decide I'm going to keep up that offensive momentum and just attack what's in front of me, so I go for the Heat Wave, and he brings in his, it KOs the Metagross, and he brings in his Mega Absol, and misses a Stone Edge, which is pretty big because it wouldn't have killed me, most likely. Without a crit, it would not have killed me, but now I'm sitting at full health, and I'm able to discharge and fully para that Mega Absol. So discharge coming in the clutch there. We see why it's usually ran over Thunderbolt. He brings in his Clef, and that gets paralyzed as well. I'm really sorry that the hacks turned out that way, but on the other hand, I am running Discharge for that very reason. I'm not really looking for the full paras per se. I was more looking for the speed control, but I will take the full paras as part of the game. So I'm going to stay in here, and I'm going to try to scout what this Clefable set is. If I do see that it's a setup Clefable, I will go out into my Heatran and roar this thing out. But it's right now all he's shown me is Moonblast and Moonlight, so I'm gonna try and stay in and whittle this thing down as much as possible. He does end up getting the special attack drop, so I'm gonna switch out into my Heatran as he does get fully paralyzed. Now here I was expecting him to switch out into Manaphy, so I'm gonna make the switch into my Weavile so that I can knock off whatever item the incoming Manaphy had, but he decides to stay in against a Heatran, so he gets off a Wish, and so I'm just going to go for the Icicle Crash here, and he lives on 1% and is able to knock me out with a Moonblast. So that's very unfortunate. I could have preserved my Weavile for later in the game, but I did get that low roll on the Icicle Crash, and he gets his Wish back up, and now he is sitting at above 50%. I bring out my Heatran, and I go for the Flash Cannon. I thought he might switch in Manaphy there again, but I couldn't risk him recovering up more health with this Clefable. So now Manaphy is in, and I'm going to stay in and just Flash Cannon to scout what kind of set this Manaphy is, and it goes for the Calm Mind. And as soon as I see that, I'm switching out into Keldeo. It sets up another Calm Mind, so it's sitting at +2 right now. A very threatening Manaphy, but I do have the choice specs, and I am able to hit it on the physically defensive side with Secret Sword, and I bring it to a point where I can kill it with another Secret Sword. All I need to do is tank the +2 Dazzling Gleam. Keldeo chews that, lives on 10%, and is able to knock out that Manaphy. So we do end up picking up the W versus Joao with a nice 3-0, and that's gonna be a 3-0 win to loss ratio for my round 1 pool play, which means I'm automatically moving up to round 2. This competition is going to be a little bit harder there. Obviously, I'm going to be facing the people that just won in round 1, so it's going to be fun, it's going to be difficult, and I'm very excited to show you guys in the next video. But for now, this is Reconjack signing off.